Yo, welcome to my channel. This story about the White Naruto, son of the Thor. Chapter 1, let's start. Subscribe to my channel, of course.
The Forest of Death was and still is known as one of the deadliest places in all of Konoha. Even the ninjas fear traveling into such a place, especially by oneself, but for so reason, there was someone either brave or foolish enough to venture into such a place. A certain blonde spiky-haired, bright blue-eyed boy of about 9 years old, with whisker marks on his cheeks, wearing a white t-shirt and black shorts, hiding his malnourish. Alright, I just have to stay here until morning, then Kiba can end up giving Akamaru a kiss right on the lips. Just picturing that made the young child laugh quietly, not to gain any animal's attention. You see, during the day, young Naruto got into an argument with his classmate, Kiba, both trying to be top dog of the class, which somehow lead Naruto to end up in the of death to begin with Kiba telling Naruto that if he loses the whiskered boy would have to clean the Inuzuka's kennels for at least a week, with Naruto telling Kiba he'd have to give his dog, Akamaru, a big kiss in front of everyone in their class and in the middle of the square where lots of people gather around. At first, Kiba didn't want to follow that deal, but because of his male Inuzuka pride, he agreed to it wholeheartedly. And how will Naruto have proof, because Kiba would smell the forest of death on him, since his sister warned him not to go there. The stupid boy went there anyway. Luckily he didn't go into the forest because of the fence, to the smell of the forest he would never forget it, along with the scary noises inside the place, which caused the boy to turn tail and run. Which leads us to where Naruto was, looking around. The boy continued to walk about in the forest, luckily due to the Kyuubi no Kitsune being sealed inside him, not that he about it. Some of the animals stayed away, the other animals didn't think much of him, thinking he didn't have enough meat on him. Soon Naruto came across a large root, thankfully it was just big enough for him to clamber over it. As soon as he got to the top he was slightly out of breath, looking left, from the tree, he saw quite a distance, lots of bushes, grass and patches of mud everywhere, but the moment he looked right, he came face to face with a giant centipede hissing at him. The appearance of such a creature caused Naruto to topple backwards, down the other side of the route, but due to the momentum he kept rolling, that is until his head hit something, clang, something metal, which caused him to fall unconscious. The centipede on the other hand, was still at the top of the route, waiting for its possible prey to get up and run, but it didn't. Slowly, the creature made its way towards Na, moving in a circular pattern around Naruto, making sure that this wasn't a trick. The moment it felt that it was safe it started advancing. That is until a sudden flash of light blinded the creature. Once the light stopped, young Naruto was nowhere to be seen, not even the metal object. Centipede was hissing in anger. Its meal was gone. Having nothing better to do, it scurried away. In Naruto's place was a burnt circle with Celtic lines burnt inside it. Unknown medical room. Slowly waking, Naruto had no idea what was going on. His head was pulsing from the knock it had. Oh god, my head, what the hell happened? Slowly his eyes got used to his surroundings. It looked like a hospital room, only instead of it being white everywhere was gold. Where am I? About to get up to look around, the door to the room opened. In walked a tall long-haired blonde with a muscular build. For a moment, Naruto thought he was looking at a adult version of himself. Though the fact he had an eye patch threw Naruto off, the man began to speak to Naruto. Greetings young one, it's nice to see that you are AWOC. From what Heimdall told me, you took quite a nasty hit to your head, before he brought you here, along with my hammer. Since his hair grew. Naruto has a confused look on his face. What are you talking about? I didn't see a hammer. Here Thor gave a slight puzzled look. Thinking it over he realized something. If what Heimdall said is true, in a sense you did find my hammer, just with your head as a. Still looking puzzled, Naruto crossed his arms, trying to focus on the last thing he remembers, causing Thor to have a look of amusement on his face. From what my father. I had the same look when I were his age. Suddenly, Naruto's eyes widened. He remembers what happened. A monster jumped out at him and made him roll of the root, but as soon as he got to the bottom, he kept rolling, where he hit his head on something hard and heard a loud echo Y clang before he was knocked out. Jumping up slightly, Naruto replied back, "Yeah, this monster scared me, and I rolled off of the big root I was on. Next thing I know I hit my head and heard a clang sound." Smiling, Thor replied, "Yes, that's what Heimdall saw as well, since I asked him to keep an eye on my hammer. Since his hammer was destroyed, along with restoring Eve, that Thanos had done, along with bring back the people the Mad Titan had killed, Thor and his people decided to live on Earth, at least until the Gnome King and his people rebuild Asgard, since the king of the gnomes got, not only his people back, but his hands as well, allowing Thor to pick up the pieces of his past weapon, Mjolnir, thanks to Heimdall finding the pieces, which allowed the Forge Master to rebuild the mighty hammer. During the time on Earth, Thor's people were enjoying their lives, with the help of Tony Stark and the Aveng. When it was time to leave they had a nice goodbye. In time Thor's people rebuilt their lives and flourished once more. The god of thunder was happy. Since that time, Thor became a strong and powerful king, helping his people as best as he can. He gave his thanks to his friends on Earth and towards the Gnome King for helping him rebuild Asgard. Due to how long it took for the people of Asgard to be rebuilt, centuries had passed. Thor was now looking like a man in his 50s, his friends have now passed on, the Earth Becca. Distant memory for him. During that time, Thor found himself feeling nostalgia, missing Midgard. His brother Loki, who became his advisor, suggested that Thor travels to for some time, to try and enjoy himself to get it out of his system, which Thor agreed to. So during his trip, Thor found himself enjoying his trip, though the earth had changed greatly. He found himself in a bar drinking an alcoholic drink called sake. At first he thought he could handle it, a king of Asgard would be able to drink anything like sake. Unfortunately, the sake was enriched with chakra, causing him to get drunk after 5 bottles of sake, where he ended up finding himself pasted out on a bed, naked and alone. Couldn't really remember what happened, but he got his clothes and went back to Asgard, never knowing about a little gift he left behind. Years later, Heimdall told him about finding an adult male that resembles the thunder god, fighting a giant 9-tailed fox. Thor, surprised at the notion, asked Heimdall to see what he sees, allowing Thor to see a certain 4th Hokage in battle, looking very similar to himself, during which, Heimdall explained about Minato's past, along with Tho's involvement with Minato's mother. At first Thor was angry at not being told about his son, but Heimdall explained that he didn't want to interfere with Thor's vacation and not watching him, which Thor understood. Even though Thor wanted to help his apparent son, he was only just regaining his strength from his trip, trying to think of a way to help Minato. Came up with answer. He sent his hammer, Mjolnir, to help Minato. Seeing as Thor had Stormbreaker, the problem was once Mjolnir was on its way to Minato, the 9-tailed used one of its tails to bash it away, sending it into the forest of death, and because Minato didn't call for it, he had to use the Shiki Fuin to seal the fox away, due to the sea interfered with Heimdall's vision, causing him to look away. Having lost the vision, it took some time for Heimdall to find Thor's hammer, the Thunderer being distraught that he couldn't save his son. Once Heimdall found the waited for a possible sign that Thor's bloodline didn't die out on Earth, which turned out to be a good call, seeing as a certain young whiskered boy was closing in on the without even realizing it. The moment Naruto was close enough, Heimdall opened the Bifrost and brought the hammer and boy to Asgard, which lead to where Naruto was now. "Tell me lad, what is your name?" Naruto looked towards the man. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki and I'm gonna be the next Hokage." Naruto answered back with a big confidant grin that reminded Thor more of himself. Smiling towards the boy, Thor began, "'Tis nice to meet you young Naruto, I am Thor, the god of thunder and king of Asgard." Having the same grin as Naruto. Naruto's eyes widened, he was talking to not only a king but a god as well. With a giant smile on his face Naruto started jumping around in excitement, like any kid his age would, causing the king to laugh at his merriment. Now young Naruto, there is more I need to say." Gaining Naruto's attention, Thor began again, "I'm not only just a god of thunder and a king, but it would seem I am also your grandfather as well." Hearing such a thing caused Naruto's mind to black out, "Which means lad, you are entitled to wield Mjolnir, but possibly rule Asgard one day, but with Mjolnir there is a cat. You have to be worthy to wield Mjolnir and only Mjolnir can decide it. Unfortunately, Naruto couldn't hear what Thor was saying, his mind at the moment shut down from information overload, just as Thor got to the rule Asgard part. Naruto's rolled into the back of his head falling back onto the pillow unconscious. Seeing this, Thor began to worry a little, that is until a voice spoke from behind him, "Well brother, it seems our young ward Road became overwhelmed by the information you gave him." Turning around, Thor spotted his brother, Loki, standing at the door with his arms crossed, an amused smile on his face. You see, once everything was fixed, even Loki came back, where both stepbrothers mended their broken bonds and looked out for each other. It was a rocky road at first, but managed to patch things up. Hearing his brother's words, Thor released sigh. I guess you're right brother, I was just overexcited to finally have a family, besides you, that I guess I wasn't thinking abo Naruto's position on it. Loki walked up to his brother, placing a hand on his shoulder. These things take time brother, after all, it took time for our bridge to be built back up, so let's let the boy Moving towards the door, Loki waited for his brother, Stormbreaker on his back in a harness, poking out of the top of his cloak. Standing up, Thor tucked Naruto back into his bed, ruffling the boy's hair like his own father did for him. Looking towards his hip, where Mjolnir was hanging, Thor grabbed hammer and looked towards Naruto. A smile appeared on his face. In time, he will be ready for you, but for now, let's let him grow some more. Placing the hammer back on his hip, Thor makes his way to the trophy room, placing Mjolnir on a stand, his hand gliding over the leather of the mighty hammer. His memo. His many battles with his weapon before it was destroyed by his sister, Hela. Removing his hand, Thor left the room. He may be a god and a king, but even he can't escape the horrid work of ruling a kingdom. Once he and Loki had returned to the throne room, Thor looked over at his brother thoughtful. You know brother, I don't know if I want to allow young Naruto to return back where he had come from. He told Loki. Loki looks over at Thor as he knew his brother was worried about his grandson. For he had missed out on his only son, and when he learned of the man, he was too late to anything for him. I know brother, but there has to be someone out there worried about the boy. He told his brother. At this, Thor nodded his head. He would have to go and meet with those people once Naruto has awoken once more. For they have a lot to talk about, and maybe just could stay for a little while and watch over the boy and train in as a warrior as he and his brother were trained by their father before them. Send a message to Heimdall. I want him to let me know of anyone that seeks young Naruto. Ordered Thor to one of the random guards of the Thorn Room. Konoha. Hiruzen Sarutobi, also known as the third Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, also known as the village hidden in the leaf. Sarutobi sat at his office desk looking in his Krista. For one person and one person alone. Uzumaki Naruto. The boy had been missing for over a week now, and no one had seen him since he had made his silly little bet with the Inuzuka clan, the second child of Suna Inuzuka, who was furious with her son and his stupidity. He had sent out several teams of Anbu made up of Inuzukas and Hyugas along with others, and just teams up both said clans. But nothing was found in the forest of D. But a strange burnt circle made into a strange symbol. One that Sarutobi has never seen in his 70 years of life, and he had even sent a photo of it to Jiraiya, thinking it might be a seal that he might not even know of. Hoping that his student might even know what it might be. But like the teams he had sent out, the crystal ball had found nothing. It was like Naruto had vanished from the face of the earth. Where could he be? Could have Danzo kidnapped him? Will I have to kill him once and for all? He asked himself. Dog. Neko. Called the third Hokage. Two Anbu appeared before him as they knelt before their cage. The old man before them had appeared to age greatly since the son of their late leader had vanished. But know that Naruto was Minato's son. Exterminate the root, was all he said as the two Anbu stood up and looked long and hard at their leader and then at each other as nodded their heads and vanished. They would need to gather their teams and get to work. I just pray to Kami Naruto he doesn't have you. Prayed Sarutobi as he looked up to the heavens away from his crystal ball. Asgard. Heimdall opened his eyes as he heard the prayer for the young boy and moved his sight to the old man dressed in white and red robes. Tell Thor I have found one that say. The boy. he said as the guard took off running back to the palace. Naruto slowly awoke once more from his sleep. Man, I must have hit my head hard then, I thought. He said to himself as he looked around the room he saw earlier. His E grew as it was clicking that this wasn't a dream. That it really was really. That he really does have family and he just met his grandfather who is a king and a god. A laugh was heard from the far corner of the room. Naruto swiveled his head towards the sound to see a tall pale man with long back hair and blue eyes. Who are you? He asked as he was still in shock. Loki pushes off the wall and walks over to the bed and pulls a chair over with him as he walks over to the boy. I, dear nephew, am your uncle Loki, the god of mischief and trickery and all around chaos. He told the boy before him whose eyes just grew even more. You're a god as well. Are you also a king? Asked young Naruto. Loki chuckled at the boy's innocence. No, I'm not. My brother is the king. I just advise him in matters that he may need help with. He told Naruto as the boy just slowly in his head. So you're like those old bags that nag the old man when they don't get their way? Questioned Naruto. At this Loki was taken back by. What do you mean? He questioned as he was wondering what the boy was talking about. Well, where I'm from, old man Hokage runs the village and he has these 3 old bags that advise him, and when he doesn't give them what they want they bitch and give more paperwork to do, and then they have the civilian council gang up on him as the shinobi council do their best to stop them from getting their way all the time. Said N. As he was sitting up with his legs crossed and his arms crossed over his chest. Loki arches his raven eyebrow to this. I appears your Hokage needs to remind them who's the one ruling the village. He told the boy. Naruto nodded his head in agreement. Yeah, a lot of the time. They fight about me. One of the old bags that wrapped up in bandages wants me as he says I would be his weapon to protect the village. But the old man keeps tell him to go to hell. The boy told his uncle. Weapon? Questioned Loki. Naruto nodded his head. Yeah, I don't know what he means, and the old man doesn't think I'm listening when I'm in his office doing my homework or just playing or faking that I'm napping. I asked him once what the old mummy meant. But he told me not to worry and just gave me some candy and told me to go off and play. He told man before him. Unknown to them, Thor was listening to them on the other side of the open door. He was growing upset by hearing this. He grandson wasn't a thing to be used. He was be loved and cared for. That was making him even more not to allow him to return back home. He would do well growing up here as a young prince and warrior of Asgard. Loki turned out alright. Well, that was a therapy session for another day. Just as Thor was going to enter the room with his brother and grandson, a guard came running up to him. Your Majesty, Heimdall has sent me to find you. He has found someone seeking the boy, said the winded guard. I'll be there shortly, said Thor as he watched the guard leave. He shouldn't have been winded like that. They are slacking again. I might have to get the Valkyries to TRA them once more. He thought to himself as he wouldn't allow what happened last time to happen again. Loki looked to the doorway as he heard his brother speaking to someone. He is awake and would like to speak to you again, he told his brother as he stood up from his seat. Naruto looked at Loki a little puzzled for a moment as he didn't see anyone until he saw his grandfather walking into the room that he was being held in. Grandpa, shouted Naruto as he shot out of his bed and into Thor. Thor was caught off guard as Naruto's thin underfeet body slammed into his large frame. Even as small as Naruto is, he still had some strength behind him. Are you feeling little better? He asks him. Yeah, but I want to go back home. But I also want to stay here with you and Uncle Loki, said Naruto as he smiles up at Thor. Thor chuckles at his antics. You are full of spirit for sure, he said, but his joyful eyes harden at the thought of Naruto returning to the village. For what the doctors had to. Naruto had been starved and he had been lucky to be alive. Do you really want to go back there? Asked Thor as he was hoping the boy would want to stay there with them. Naruto looked up at him and squinted his eyes at the man. Well, I really do want to go back. For if I don't, I can't become a badass ninja and then Hokage, he said with passion. In his voice. Who was Thor to deny this young warrior his dream? With a sigh, Thor looked to his brother and down at Naruto. All right, little one, we will return back to your village. You of us will always be with you, he said as Loki nodded his head. Just that short amount of time talking with Naruto, Loki had grown fond of the boy. He reminded him of himself in ways. He was full of spirit and mischief. He might even give him, the god of mischief, a run for his money once he got older. We will return to your village at dawn. But first let get you some dinner, said Thor as he looked over at Loki. Naruto's eyes widened as his stomach growled out. He was sporting a huge blush and grin on his tiny face. Sorry, I didn't know how hungry I was, he told them. Loki smirked at the boy. Well, you have been sleeping for about 4 days now. I am sure you will be eating as much as Thor, he told his nephew as Thor just pouted look. His brother for teasing him. I am a warrior and as such I should eat like one, said Thor with a proud grin on his face. Naruto couldn't help but giggle at his grandfather's antics. He acted just like him when the old man took him out for ramen. I have been told I eat as much as the Akamichi clan does when it comes to ramen, said Naruto proudly at both the two older men in front of him. Loki just smiled as Thor chuckled. I would have to meet this clan and challenge them to an eating contest, he said with a boost as Loki just pushed Thor out of the medical. As Naruto followed behind them. Good luck with that. I have only once beat Choji's dad in an eating contest and that was because I got the last bowl of ramen, said Naruto with a proud grin. Even Thog knew the old man that ran the ramen stand had more. He knew it wouldn't have been good to allow them to keep eating like they had been, for someone would had gotten sick. Thor and Loki led Naruto to a grand dining hall where all the warriors of Asgard stood as they saw their king and prince of Asgard walk in, followed by a mini version on T. King. Naruto's eyes grew as he saw all the warriors stand and bow to his grandfather and uncle. He was amazed by this, for he had never seen even the old man get this respect in his life. Konoha Hokage Tower. Jiraiya comes flying though the window of the Hokage's office as a blonde-haired woman stands outside. She is glaring kunai at the white-haired man that is laying on the Hoka desk, bleeding all over his paperwork. The paperwork he had just finished. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he saw all his hard work destroyed within seconds of those coming to the tower. Why Kami? Why me? Why do I have students that have no respect for me? Cried out Sarutobi as he was now standing up and marching over to his broken office window. He was going to give his blonde-haired student a piece of his mind. Kami, damn it, Tsunade. Do you know how long that took me to get done? He roared. Now named Tsunade. Tsunade matched his glare and jumped through his window with her fist balled, punching him into the wall on the far side of his office. There she stood before the two down, glaring at them as they could have sworn that had seen the Shinigami sprite right behind her. I don't give a Kami damn in hell, sensei. What I care about is why I was told that Naruto was alive, she said in an eerie clam voice. Even the Anbu hidden in the office frozen in their spots as they could feel death was standing right next each them, and the blonde in that office was the messenger that Shinigami had sent on his behalf. Jiraiya slowly pushed his upper body up off the desk that now was covered in his blood as papers stuck to his back from the old and fresh blood that was on his red Haori tea. Was now a darker crimson color from his blood, and in some places, it appeared to be black from where the blood had dried. His green kimono shirt had the right sleeve MI, and the left one just hung by a few threads and was also covered in his dried and fresh blood. His pants had burn marks on them and rips from a kunai or something else. One knew as Tsunade was a beast on the battleground. He was also missing one of his wooden sandals off of his left foot, as the other one was just hanging on by just a street. The sandal over his big toe. Hi, I told you. He didn't know. I never told sensei you your secret, said Jiraiya weakly as he couldn't tell if he was going to black out or throw up as his head was spinning, as well as his stomach, and the room didn't help things, as well as the four Tsunades standing before him. He felt he had lived a good life, and if he died here today, had nothing he would regret. Well, maybe one thing, but there was nothing he could do about it now. I'm sorry, Naruto, for being a shitty godfather, he said as he fell back the desk as he had blacked out from the concussion Tsunade had given him with the 3-day beating on their way back to the village. Sarutobi looked at his two students with confusion as to what Jiraiya was talking about, and to Tsunade as she looked to want to murder the man for saying what he had said. What is Jiraiya talking about, Tsunade? He questioned as two of his Anbu helped him out of the wall as Boar and Owl stood in front of them trying to protect their lead comrades that are aiding the man at the moment. With a heavy sigh as tears welled up in her eyes, Tsunade looked at her old sensei. Her anger was fading and being replaced with grief for the loss of her family and being a accursed village that had taken more from her than what it had ever given her in return. But this was the life of a shinobi, a life she had agreed to live. A life her ex-lover had given his life for. A life her brother had given his life for, and her grandfather and brother and even her parents leaving her at a young age in the care of her grandma. Alongside her brother, Mito had done her best in her old age to raise the girl right along with her foolish husband before he died in war. After he had given his all to fight bastard Madara Uchiha and sealed the 9 tails within his wife and her grandmother. I will tell you once all have left his office. For what I'm going to tell you, only one other person knows about. Not even Shizune knows about this, for she has done several in the past to make me question my trust in her, and when Jiraiya had shown up, I knocked her out and left with him. Said Tsunade as now the tears rolled down her cheek. Unknown to them, someone was watching and listening to everything being said before this would need to be reported back to Thor. For it involved Naruto and maybe even son or daughter-in-law. With a nod of his head, Sarutobi had dismissed all his Anbu from his office and had done several hand signs as the office now glowed a royal blue before it faded away to a. But this didn't stop Heimdall's all-seeing eye from seeing and hearing of what was going on. Now explain to me what is going on, and could you please heal Jiraiya before he bleeds out and dies? Asked Sarutobi as he looked with worried eyes to his 2 students. One bleeding on his desk and the other one that had placed him in this state of being. Fine, said Tsunade with annoyance lacing her voice as she peeled the man off her sensei's desk and laid him on the couch and began healing him from all his injuries, affected on him. After several minutes all his injuries and wounds had been healed and Jiraiya slept soundly on the couch without a worry in the world. Tsunade's honey brown eyes glared at her sensei after she had finished her task of healing her old teammate. Slowly she stood and walked over to one of the remaining that hadn't been destroyed when she had entered the office and stood it back up and sat down. Outside the Hokage's office doors, Anbu held back all the Jonin and Chunin from rushing in to protect their Hokage from his attacker. They hadn't seen who had entered the broken window but only felt the massive killer intent directed at their leader. Shikaku Jonin commander looked at Bor. What has happened and who was the one that broke into the Hokage's office? He ordered. Bor looked to the Jonin commander as Commander Dragon had appeared alongside him with Ibiki. All 3 men wanted answers. Lady Tsunade delivered Jiraiya of the Sanin though the window as she had beaten him something fierce. This beating was worse than the time she had caught him peeping on her at the hot spring. She had punched the Lord Hokage yelling at him about lying to her about something. What I do not know. She is explaining to him right now. Why she is mad at him and Jiraiya Bo. Only Jiraiya has any notion to why she is so angry with Lord Hokage and the village. He told the 3 men before him as the others just paled and took a step back. Even Tsunade as the weakest of the 3 Sanin, she was still a beast and none of them hoped to match her on the battleground as she would murder them all and maybe for giggles, she would save their lives just to do it all over again. That still does not explain her actions against our Hokage. She will have a lot to answer for once the seal on that door comes off. Growled out Ibiki as he wasn't in the this kind of bullshit, he had other things to do and people to torture at the moment. He didn't have time to deal with a woman having mood swings. Bad enough he has to. With Anko when it's her times of the month and no one wants to deal with. Commander Dragon shook his head. I doubt that Lord Hokage will allow anyone to do anything to her. For she has her reason to be acting out like this. There has to be She had returned to the village. For I was there that day she left, and she told Lord Hokage it would be an act of kami to get her to come back to this accursed village. He tall. Other 2 men as he knew deep down in his bones that something massive is about to come out and rock the very roots of this village. Roots that have long rotted away been replaced with nothing but malice and distrust. Something that would be making the woman's grandparents roll in their graves about. Troublesome. Sighed Shikaku as he knew the Hokage would never allow any punishment before the woman locked in his office with him. He turned to all those in the hall. Return to your post and homes. There is nothing here for you to see or hear. We 3 will handle things from here on out. He ordered as all the shinobi left as they didn't to leave. But they didn't want to upset the Jonin commander or Commander Dragon or Ibiki, for these 3 men held a lot of power that when the Lord Hokage was away. could and would command the village and her troops in his place. Back inside the Hokage's office, Tsunade looked down at her hands as she thought about how to explain her deepest darkest secret and the one she had ever regretted every single day of her life. But the life she had lived so far wasn't one that was suited to raise a child or even dreaming about raising a child in her lifestyle. Or even with the pay she has been traveling with. Could she ever trust her with this secret? No, she couldn't, not this one. For something in the back of her mind told her that if she had ever revealed this secret to her, it would have been told to the wrong person. For in the past few years she has been placed in danger and had several run-ins with Root and IWA Ninja Alley, wanting her to return with them or for the bounty that was placed on her from the past wars. Had she been betrayed several times by this woman? For each time this happened, Shizune was never around. Heimdall's amber eyes looked to the crimson hair woman. Tell Thor I have found the mother of his son, the grandmother of his grandson. He told he woman as she nodded head and left his chambers and walked to the rainbow bridge where her winged horse awaited its mistress to return. Flying to the palace gates, she landed her winged horse as she rushed into the palace as she made her way to the grand dining hall where Thor and Loki with young Naruto. She pushed the grand doors open as all eyes turned her way. Thor stood up as Loki looked towards the crimson hair woman. Your Majesty, I have word from Heimdall, said the crimson hair woman. What word does he send? Asked Thor as he looked worried. He has found the mother of your son, said the crimson hair woman as Thor stood up tall. His eyes had hardened at hearing this. The mystery woman he had spent that with had come out of the shadows and had made herself known. But how? Was the thought that was racing through his mind. Thank you. Let Heimdall know we will be there shortly to be transported to meet with her, said Loki as he looked at Naruto, who was busy eating his dinner as he was and didn't care what was going on. He would let the adults handle whatever it was going on. With that said, the crimson hair woman nodded her head and bowed to both her king and prince and left the palace quickly to relay the message back to Heimdall. Hokage Tower. Why didn't you feel you couldn't trust me with this? Asked Sarutobi as he felt hurt and a little betrayed by his only female student for having so little trust in him. She looked up at him with grief in her eyes. At the time, I didn't know who I could trust. There was so much going on and Danzo was moving in the light of day with his program. I feared if I told you, you might have placed my son in his program in a twisted way to protect him. She told him all honestly. He sighed and looked down at his desk with shame and guilt. To be honest, he might have done that, or he would have made it known that the boy was the Prince of Konoha. Something that would have been very foolish and prideful on his part. Showing that the Senju line was still gone strong in the village and it didn't end with Tsunade. Hee ha. Question though. Tsunade, where did you come up with the name Namikaze? He asked her as he couldn't remember a clan with that surname. She looked up at him a little surprised. That was the one thing he was hung up on. Of all things to be wondering about. He was wondering about Minato's surname. It was great-grandmother's clan name, before the clan pretty much fell during the First Shinobi War. But I have heard there are a few surviving members still left in Kumo. But I made my way there yet to find out. She told him. He had the look of shock and wonder. Did Minato fight his own clan's men in the Third Shinobi War without knowing it? What a horrifying thought to have. Asgard, Thor, Loki, and Naruto walk up to where Heimdall stands guard with his ever-watchful eyes on the rainbow bridge. You called for me, Heimdall? Called Thor from the doorway as they walk in. Never looking away from the two people talking in the Hokage's office, Heimdall speaks. Yes, I did call for you. The woman that you have bedded so long ago has come and admitted she is the mother of Minato Namikaze, the father of your grandson Naruto Uzumaki. He told them. Young Naruto looked up at the man with wide eyes as he had just learned about who Minato Namikaze was. He was the late and great Yondaime Hokage, who died the Nig, was born fighting the Kyubi no Kitsune. Heimdall did look over at Naruto with a sad smile. There will be many truth coming out today, child. Please be strong during all this, he said as he looked back to where been watching. Loki knelt down to the boy and looked him in the eyes. What is wrong? He asked his nephew. Naruto blinked and looked at his uncle. How is the Yondaime my father? Questioned Naruto. What do you mean? Hasn't anyone told you who your parents are? Questioned Thor as he looked down at his grandson. No. I was just told my parents were shinobi that died fighting the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Said Naruto as he had tears welling up in the corner of his eyes. His Gigi-chan has been to him all his life, telling him he didn't know who his parents are. Now he wanted to know who his mother was. Heimdall. We need to travel there now. With the woman there. I have many questions and I need them answered as well for the old man she is talking to. Said Thor as growing upset with what he just heard. Heimdall just nodded his head and got ready to open the gate to the Hokage Tower. Hokage Tower. I don't blame you for your lack of trust. At the time I was brash and foolish young man. Said Sarutobi as he looked up at his student with a sad soft smile. Tsunade just nodded her head. VROOOOOOOMMM. In a blinding light up the office as Tsunade was up and ready to fight as Sarutobi was now in his battle robes as sleeping Jiraiya was now up getting ready for battle. Just then a man with long blonde hair with an eye patch stood there with a man in a lean build with long black hair stood next to him and in between both men stood Naru. Looking a little green around the gills. Naruto. Shouted Sarutobi as he saw the missing boy standing between the two men as the tall-built blonde placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Just take a deep breath, Naruto. It will pass in a few moments. Said Thor as he smiled down at the little blonde next to him. Loki looks down at his brother and then at Naruto and smiles. Remembering their first time traveling thought Heimdall's gateway. They both ignored the all others in the office as they watched Naruto quickly feel better and grin up at both of them. Answer me, commanded Sarutobi as he glared at the two men as he watched them with Naruto standing between them. Naruto looked over at his Gigi-chan with a frown on his face. Gigi-chan. Don't yell at my grandpa and uncle like that, he said with his frown still on his face. Tsunade's eyes widen as she studies the man standing before her. It was the man that she spent that night with so long ago. It is you, she said with shock lacing her voice. Her face was priceless as it was in a state of shock. Thor looks over at her with a grin on his face. Yes, it is I. The man you laid with oh so long ago and had a son with. He told her as if it was a fact he was stating. Sarutobi stood there frozen as he looked at the golden hair man studying him. He looked like an older version of Minato and Naruto. Both males had taken after this man be him. They really didn't take really anything from their mothers. But maybe their personalities if anything. But he didn't know anything of this man before him or the other standing next to him. But one thing he did know was they both had power radiating off of them both. They both are monsters in power in their own right. Allow me to introduce myself. Said Thor as he looked at the three standing in the office before him. I am Thor, the king of Asgard and the god of thunder. He said as he watched their eyes grow even larger at what he had told them. He even did a bow for a little show. Loki rolled his eyes at his brother's antics as he looked at the others as he spoke as well. I am Loki, prince of Asgard and royal advisor to the king. As well I am the god. Mischief and chaos, he said with a grin as he bowed as well. Tsunade's jaw hung open as it hit the ground before her. You're a god? She asked him with shock written all over her face. Yeah, he is. I saw his kingdom and it is awesome. There are woman warriors with flying horses and man warriors that get winded too easily from just running from Heimdall. Watch point to the palace. Said Naruto as he was bouncing around with excitement of what he had seen in Asgard. Thor slapped his large hand on his face as he looked down at his grandson for pointing out that his male warriors are weak and lazy. Something he was going to have to fix. Just chuckled at his nephew's antics. I think he will be walking in both our paths. Said Loki as he looked at his brother. That I do believe he will be. Said Thor as he worried for the world of what they had awoken and Haver will be unleashing into this world. Were you the one that took Naruto that night? Asked Jiraiya as he fall back onto the couch. He was hit with a wave of nausea as he had gotten up too quick. Thor looked back at Jiraiya and shook his head no. No, it was not I that brought the boy to Asgard. It was my gatekeep Heimdall who had been keeping watch over my that was inside your forest of death. He said as he thought about the man of the forest he just spoke of. Your hammer? Questioned Sarutobi as he looked puzzled at the god of thunder before him. Thor grinned at he took the leather strap of the hammer on his belt. Yes, this is Mjolnir. I had thrown it to Earth 9 years ago while my son was fighting the beast UCA. Kyuubi. He said as he looked at them as if it was a fact. They all seemed shocked at this. He had tried to aid Minato in his battle with the Nine Tails. But it didn't happen, for he had still summoned the death god to seal the beast in. Small boy before them all. This is when Loki spoke up, as he wanted an answer to something that was bothering him for a while since he had met his nephew. Would you mind answering something, me? He asked with calculating eyes at the old man standing behind the large desk. Foolishly Sarutobi nodded his head. To the other god standing before him. Why is there a dark energy coming from my nephew as well? Whatever happened to the beast? Questioned Loki as this got Thor looking at the old man who seemed to be aging more. Yes, I would like to know this as well. For Heimdall lost sight of the beast when he was blinded by a bright light, and the beast was gone, and my son and his bride was Dia. Said Thor, wanting to know this answer as well. Sarutobi was now sweating heavily as he paled even more. He didn't want to answer them, but he saw in both those men's eyes if he tried to lie, something bad would happen. Him, and no one would be able to stop them from pushing him. That night, Minato couldn't kill the Kyuubi no Kitsune. He had to do something before it broke free from Kushina's chakra chains. So he did the only thing one do with a Biju. He sealed it within his newborn son. Said Sarutobi as he feared he was going to be punished for the actions of the past to save the village. Thor looked a little puzzled for a moment as Loki's eyes widened as he pulled his brother to him and whispered something into the man's ear. This is when his eyes grew in as he didn't want to be in his office at this very moment. He wanted to be a million miles away from here. Away from these two powerful men that stood right before him. You are telling me that the beast is inside the boy? Asked Thor as he was growing upset with this little bit of information that was told to him. Naruto's eyes widened as he heard this. He has a monster inside of him. Is this why everyone hates him? Why everyone attacks him on his birthday and sells him food that and overpriced? He looked ready to cry as he looked at his Gigi-chan with heartbroken eyes as he fell to his knees. Both Thor and Loki were at his side. Both holding the boy, whispering to him. Telling him he wasn't the beast, that he was him, and it was just sealed within him. They are separate from each other. He was just the beast jailer. Inside Naruto's mindscape, the Kyuubi was awoken from his slumber as he could feel that his jailer was emotional unstable. But something outside of the boy was very powerful and could challenge beast. So he just closed his eyes and went back to sleep. In due time he would have his time and he would be freed once more. Hokage's office. Naruto was having a panic attack. Seeing this, Tsunade pushed both men away from the boy as she calmed him. Calm down. Look into my eyes and take deep slow breath. You get sick and pass out. She told him as his crystal blue eyes looked into her honey brown eyes. Slowly his breathing calmed down and he kept his eyes locked with tears welled up in his eyes. Before Tsunade knew it, Naruto had latched onto her and began crying his little eyes out. She held him tight as she rubbed circles on his back to soothe him as his tears slowly stopped and he hiccuped. Shish. It's alright, said Tsunade as she just held him tight, not wanting to let go of him. Naruto looks up at her in a whisper. He spoke. I'm not a monster. He asked her. This broke Tsunade's heart as tears broke and rolled down her cheeks as Thor and Loki had heard the boy's question as well. No, you are not a monster. You are a little boy, my grandson. I'm so sorry, baby, for not being here for you when you needed me. She told him in tears. His small hand tightened into a fist into her green jacket she wore. He held on for dear life. He wasn't going to let go of her. She was his anchor that he needed at this moment. Thor looked to Sarutobi as lightning could be seen flashing in his eyes. Who cares for my grandson? He demanded. Right now before the elder Hokage, this man was a god demanding to know about his grandson's well-being. He lives alone. He has lived on his own since he was 4 years old. Said Sarutobi as he looked away. He couldn't make eye contact with the man before him as the man. Raven hair eyes widen a fraction. What do you mean he has been on his own since he was 4 years old? Now child his age should be alone. Roared Thor. Outside the Hokage's office, Shikaku, Ibiki, and Commander Dragon stiffened alongside the Anbu that should have been in that office with their Hokage. Who was that? Questioned Shikaku as he looked at the two men across from him. They shook their heads. They had never heard that voice before and it had them all on edge, for they didn't know what they would find once the seal was taken down. Wah. Their Hokage would be in. Sarutobi took a shaky breath before standing tall. He was now the leader of a village that needed to stand his ground against this man before him. He wasn't his whipping. No, he was the god of all shinobi and he must show this man his place before him. He was thrown out of the orphanage as he was mistreated there and hardly ever feed. My Anbu did their best to make sure the boy ate as they would bring him snacks, treats for him to eat in the morning and evening. For anything that was given to him was either taken away or at times poison. But due to him being the host of the Kyuubi, Beast kept him safe and burned the poison out of him and always kept him strong and going. When he was thrown out it was on his 4th birthday. But luckily Inu had food before someone else hadn't brought to my office and feed him while I was kept in bullshit meetings to keep me away from the boy as the villagers hunted for him. Said Sarutobi as his old black eyes had hardened as he stared back at Thor. I could destroy this village for its sins against my heir. Growled out Thor as lightning shot out and left black marks on the office door making the men on the other side jump away from it. He is in his right to do so. Said Loki as his green eyes had hardened and darkened several shades. Naruto pulled away from Tsunade looking up at the two men before him. Please don't. They are all lost and misguided. They all hurt for they lost Someon. Loved the night I was born. Just like me. I don't hate them, pleaded Naruto for those in the village. For the foolish villagers and shinobi that had attacked him in past. It still doesn't make their actions against you right. Growled Thor as his emotions were slowly getting the better of him. Loki closed his eyes and placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. Thor looks over at his brother and saw him shake his head no. It wouldn't right anything by killing all those had wronged his grandson, for those who are innocent would be caught in the crossfire and it wouldn't make him any better of their sister and her actions against them so. Ago. Thor could read his brother's thoughts and let out a sigh. You are right, brother. I wouldn't be any better than our sister. He looked back over at Sarutobi. I do not want him here in this hellhole you call a village. But he wishes to become a shinobi of this village and one day take your title. So I will grant him his wish. But Loki will always around watching over him, and be warned now, Heimdall's all-seeing eye will always be on Naruto and anyone that tries to hurt him will be dealt with swiftly and by one of them. Warriors. Your laws will be damned. He told the elder Hokage. He is under my clan's protection as he is the only male heir of the Senju and Uzumaki clan alive. Said Tsunade as she stood holding Naruto in her arms as she stood to tea. Right as Loki was on his left. With a heavy and tired sigh. Fine. I don't give a damn. Their souls be damned. Said Sarutobi as he knew he couldn't do nothing. For the village princess was pissed off. He has two gods in his office that he couldn't do nothing about. So screw it, let them run wild. He was done with them all. Like the old saying goes, you reap what you sow. Many had sown their own grave. Are we done here? Asked Tsunade as Jiraiya had looked like he had a heart attack on the couch from the display of power from the blonde hair man and the raven hair M. Still an unknown with his power. Yes. Said Sarutobi as he dropped the seal around his office, unsealing his office as three men fell into his office, seeing an older version of Minato standing next to Tsunade. A raven hair man next to him and the missing Naruto in her arms. Loki arched a raven eyebrow at the three men laying on the floor. As he looked back at the Hokage for answers. Stand down, Shikaku Nara, Commander Dragon, and Ibiki Morino. Said Sarutobi as he saw his three commanders on the floor of his office. Ibiki stood up quickly looking at the two men. His black eyes studying them. Lord Hokage, is everything alright in here? He questioned. Yes. All is fine here. Naruto's grandfather and uncle have returned him. As they are the ones that had found him and nursed him back to health after they found him. Saw Sarutobi to the men. Shikaku's mind was running a mile a minute as he studied Thor's face. He does not look of Uzumaki. Does this mean he is of Namikaze? He questioned his leader. My brother is the father of the one you once called Minato Namikaze. Said Loki as he watched with amusement as the men before him had shocked reactions on their fact. Well, the blonde woman was his mother. This was the icing on the cake as their mouths hung open with shock. Even Dragon couldn't hide his shock behind his mask. Tsunade glared at Loki for giving her up so quickly. Loki just smirked at her. What? It is better for them to know. For wouldn't you question a child calling you grandmother? He asked her. She just looked away from Loki and looked over at Thor and saw his childish smirk on his face as he was snickering at her. You're not helping anything, she told him in a quiet growl. Naruto looked at both Tsunade and Thor with a questionable look on his face as he was wondering something. Both adults looked at him. What is it, sweetie? Asked Tsunade. This will be question she might regret for the rest of her life. Who knows? Are you and Grandpa going to live together now? Asked Naruto with innocent eyes looking at his grandparents. Tsunade was shocked by this question as Thor didn't bat an eye. I am not sure. But I need to buy us a house here, and if your grandmother wishes she can move in to aid raising you, he said as he looked at Tsunade. Tsunade let out a sigh. Don't waste your gold. I have my family clan home and both you and your brother are welcome to stay there. For that is where Naruto will be living. The display I saw here today. I know you two are not going anywhere and are going to be a big part of his life from here on out. She said as her life had been turned upside down and she was back in the village that hasn't given her nothing. Well, now it has given her something. Maybe it would be worth it. Just maybe, she thought. Thor grinned as Loki just smiled. You honor us with your kindness, Lady Tsunade, said Loki with a pleasant smile on his face. If any repair need to be done, please tell me and I will handle them all or have someone from Asgard to handle what I am unable to do, said Thor with a grin as he was be of some kind of use to someone else besides his people. Heimdall send us a team of craftsmen, said Loki as he smirked looking at Thor. Brother, you are a warrior and king as well as the god of thunder, but a craftsman you are. So allow people that know what they are doing handle all the repairs, while you handle young Naruto's training, he told his brother as a small rain cloud appeared over Th. head as he was now sulking in the corner drawing little circles on the carpet with his finger. Naruto jumps out of Tsunade's arms and jumps on Thor's back. It's okay, Grandpa, we can always learn together from the craftsman on how to fix the house, he said with eagerness in his voice, for it would be something new for him to learn and who knows, it might be fun as well. You are right, Naruto, said Thor as he stood up and pulled Naruto up into his arms as he swung him in his arms as they both laughed together. Loki just smiled watching his brother and nephew. It had been a long time since his brother had been this happy. Naruto was a blessing sent to them by the gods. He just chuckled to himself as he thought that, once we are at Lady Tsunade's home, I'm sure Heimdall will send the workers. So you two will need to behave and stay out of their way. Do you understand me? Questio. As he stood before the two blondes as the other's sweat dropped at the raven hair man scolding the two blondes. What have I agreed to? Thought Tsunade, for her life was forever going to change from here on out. Deep within the balls of Konoha, Danzo sat in his office looking over reports his root agents had handed into him. He looked at the man that knelt before him. Still no work on the Jinchuriki? He asked Th. masked man before him. No, Lord Danzo. The trail goes cold where that strange symbol appears. It is like the boy just vanished from the face of the elemental nations, said the masked agent. Danzo narrowed his single eye at the man before him. You're dismissed, he said as he looked back down at the reports on Naruto. He had missed his chance once again to kidnap the boy. I will have that boy one way or another. Nothing will stop me from having the perfect weapon against all of the elemental nations, he said to himself. He had sent his root Anbu to ever hidden and civilian village seeking for the boy. He was out there somewhere, and he was going to be the first one to find him before the fool Sarutobi found him and brought him back into the light of day. Inu and Neko stood before 7 others they had found for this mission. Granted, a few of them were not Anbu but knew and liked the little missing blonde boy and woe anything to help him if they could. Guy stood there quietly as he knew this wasn't the time for his power of youth and even had changed his clothing so black as his green spandex would stand out in the dark. The tunnels they would be traveling in. Alright. The mission is very simple. We go in and clean house. For the roots of the village have become poison and is killing the great tree we support, said Inu as he lew the others around him. Snake smirked under her mask as she had been wanting to have a piece of the old bastard for a while now. I'm glad we are finally taking care of the toxicon that has been poisoning the great tree, she told them. The others nodded their heads. Snake, Deer, Monkey, you 3 would be on my team, said Neko as she looked over at Inu. Guy, Rado, Genma, Iwashi you four will be part of my team to kill the root of all this trouble. Said Inu as he looked at his four-man team, as three of them had been Mina personal guards during his rule as Hokage and would do anything for Naruto when they would see the boy, or just stock his home with food when the boy couldn't get any. Own. They nodded their heads as they went down the two tunnels. They knew their missions and what to do. Senju compound. Thor stood next to Tsunade as Loki looked at the villagers that stopped and bowed to the blonde-hair woman and calling her princess, as some would just glare at the little Thor's arms. I believe we will have to assign a team of Valkyries to watch over Naruto, said Loki as he glared back at the fools. Many took a step back as the raven hair man scared demons would appear before him as he smirked at his little tricks. We are here, said Tsunade as she looked at the two men next to her and little Naruto, who was just looking around wide-eyed. This is my new home, Naruto asked just above a whisper. That it will be, Naruto, said Thor as he smiled down at the little boy. Tsunade placed her hand on the seal that locked the gates of her old childhood home. Slowly the old gates opened as Thor watched with wonder in his eyes as he noticed the seal locking the gates. Behind him and the others, villagers talked and whispered. The man with Princess Tsunade looks a lot like our late fourth Hokage, said a raven hair woman to a pink hair woman that narrowed her eyes as she saw the tiny blonde in man's arms. He does, and it appears the beast has entrapped him and the princess. Spat out the Pinkett. Loki turned to look at them, for the women didn't do much to hide their whispers for anyone. Both women saw him looking and did their best to send him one of their best flirting smiles, even though the Pinkett had her daughter with her. Loki gave them both a look of disgust as he turned away, leaving both women standing there in shock, for the Pinkett had many men lusting for her tone and fit body. The little Pinkett that stood with her mother looked at the people that had walked past them to see her classmate in the arms of the large blonde hair man. Mommy Naruto. He has been missing from class for the past week after stupid Kiba dared him to go to the Forest of Death, she told her mother as she was shocked to see the lit. Once more, the woman looked down at her daughter. So the brat has returned. I thought he was gone for good, she told her daughter as the mini Pinkett just shrugged her should. She always knew her mommy didn't like the boy, but she figured it was for the pranks he played on the villagers. Thor heard the woman call his grandson a brat, was ready to storm over to the woman to give her a piece of his mind when Tsunade beat him to the punch. Tsunade pulled the woman up to her by the collar of her dress as her honey brown eyes met jade green eyes. You will not be disrespecting the Senju and Uzumaki heir, growled out in an eerie calm voice that froze the Pinkett's blood. Yes, yes, princess. Tsunade, she said in a shaky voice as she feared the woman that held her. Tsunade's had a dangerous look in her eyes as she let go of the woman as she fell to the ground. Good, now go tell the others I have returned to raise my grandson. She too. As the Pinkett pulled herself back to her feet and grabbed her daughter by the arm, pulling her away as she ran away in terror as the raven hair woman followed behind. He wasn't going to stay there to receive the same punishment as the other woman. Tsunade returned back over to the two men and Naruto. I can see why you bedded her brother. She is strong and has a very strong sense of justice, said Loki with a smirk as Tsunade just glared at him and Thor just chuckled. Brother antics. She is a strong woman and warrior in her day, said Thor as he smiled at Tsunade, who oddly a blush on her cheeks from what Thor had said about her. Alright, you three. Let's go see how much work we have ahead of ourselves. For I haven't been here for over 20 years, said Tsunade as she walked past them into her land, and the gates swung shut behind them as others gathered around the gates to see the Senju princess had returned, and along with her were two unknown men and demon brat, center of the root base. The two teams had met up after cleaning up all the nests that led to the center of the main base of root. All around them lay dead bodies of root agents. The only one where the children that Danzo had kidnapped and was trying to brainwash. All the children huddled together in fear as two large king cobras watched over them. They came to kill the children, but to keep them together until they had taken care of the bastard that had taken them from their families. In another group was all teenagers that were set to be marked as Root Anbu but still hadn't taken their final exam, for Danzo had pushed it off until they had found the bee. Large snakes kept an eye on them as their bodies had been wrapped around the group. The teens had passed out from fear. Snake, keep an eye on your pets as we go for the head. ordered Nako as she knew Snake would protect the children from any root ambu they might have missed or we. In there during the attack. Danzo sat in his office unknowing what was happening in his little base as a body of a man with blonde hair flew through this office door crashing into the wall behind him. Arched an eyebrow to this as he looked over at his down agent. Weakling. He muttered at the man on the ground. Both Inu and Nako stood in the entryway looking at the bandaged man before them. You have been ordered to disband your little pets a long time ago by the Hokage Danzo. Inu in a calm and deadly voice. HN. Like that fool holds any power over me. Scuffed Danzo as he laughed at them. You have been ordered to be killed. But first, what have you done with Naruto? Demanded Nako as she wanted to know where the little boy was. She feared for his safety. Heimdall stood watching this event play out as he heard the team speak of Thor's grandson. He wanted to know what they were up to. His all-seeing eyes widen as these believed the man before them had kidnapped the young prince. Valkyrie, said Heimdall as a woman with crimson hair appeared next to him once again. Yes, Heimdall, she asked as she wanted to know why the gate guardian was summoning her now. I am going to be sending you to Earth to deliver a man to Thor and Loki, said Heimdall. She nodded her head. Who is my target? She asked him. He looked to her. One named Danzo Shimaru, he told her as she nodded her head and was gone in a golden light. Vroom. There before the two teams stood a woman with long crimson hair dressed in a white skirt and top and silver boots going to her knees. Her back to them, glared at the mummy of a man that stood before her. You Danzo Shimaru are to go meet with my king for transgressions against our king's grandson. She told him as Shish grabbed hold of him, and they vanished in a golden light. Outside of Senju compound, Vroom was heard as Thor and Loki stood at the open front door as they were going into the large home. Both men turned around to see the Valkyrie from earlier standing there before them with a man in her custody. What is the meaning of this? Demanded Thor as he wanted to know what was happening. My king, Heimdall has sent me to fetch this man to have you pass judgment on his actions against the young prince, said the crimson hair woman. Tsunade heard the woman's voice and came out of the house as Naruto followed behind her. What is going on here? She demanded as she stopped dead in her tracks as saw the woman holding Danzo as her prisoner. She didn't give a damn about the man before her but the woman that stood there. Kushina-chan, questioned Tsunade as she was shocked to see Naruto's mother dressed in strange clothing and alive. The crimson hair woman looked at the blonde with confusion at first, until she got a better look. Tsunade-ne-chan, said the now named Kushina as she was shocked too. Cousin before her. Thor and Loki watched the two before them. It appears the woman's soul was pure and a true warrior to the very end of her life. She didn't go to the world of Kami, but she, Valhalla, to the land of valiant heroes of all time and worlds. Naruto walked up to the woman and pulled on Tsunade's jacket. Grandma, do you know the pretty lady? Asked Naruto as he looked at both women as they both looked down. Him. Oh Naruto sweetie, said Tsunade as she saw Kushina's eyes widen with tears. Naruto? Questioned Kushina with a trembling voice. He looked up into her beautiful violet eyes. Yeah, that is my name, he said with a small shy smile. Oh baby, she said in a whisper. She looked over at Thor and Loki with pleading eyes. The eyes of a mother wanting to hug her son for the very first time since she had moved between worlds. Thor nodded his head. She had been one of his strongest Valkyries to date and has beaten many of his berserks. Naruto turned to look at his grandfather and uncle with question and wonder in his eyes. Kushina smiled as she got the permission she so desperately wanted from her king. Kneeling down onto one knee, she smiled at Naruto as he turned to look back at her. Quote, your mommy when I was alive, she told him as his eyes widened as he couldn't believe that he had already spoken to his mother once before and now he just found out his mommy. Mommy? Asked Naruto as he didn't know what to do. Yes, baby, she said as she pulled into her arms and held him for a while. Naruto began to cry as he didn't know how to feel about meeting his mommy, or was he meeting her spirit? He didn't know. Tsunade snapped to her sentences as she looked at Kushina with shock. How are you even alive or even here for that matter? She asked. That is easy to explain, said Loki as he looked at Tsunade. She died in battle. Valiant warrior's death, sending her to Valhalla, the resting place of all warriors who have died. Honor. From there her soul was selected to become one of the Valkyries of Asgard to protect and serve in times of peace and war. He told her as she just dumbly nodded head. This had made her wonder who else that she knew could have made to this place called Valhalla. During this time Danzo thought it would be in his best interest if he tried to get away from Kushina and the demon brat, as he needed to regroup and see if any of his age had made it out alive. Before he could make a move, Thor and Loki were standing right next to him. "I appears someone has seen you do something against Naruto and now you must pay for it." Loki with a wicked grin on his face. Just then the Inu and Neko appear with their team in front of Thor and Loki as they look at the two strange men holding onto Danzo. "Get them off of me, you fools. I am a village elder and you must listen to me," commanded Danzo as he was fearing for his life with these two men before him. "Danzo, you have been ordered to death. It will be served out by either our hands or theirs," said Inu as he glared at the bandaged old man before him. "Whose orders have this been ordered on?" demanded Danzo as he was now growling. Inu smirked under his mask as he looked at the man. "On the orders of Lord Third Hokage, as this was marked as a Black Scroll mission," he said as the amusement could be in his voice as he spoke to the ex-elder and commander of Root. Thor grinned as this man was given to him as a gift. "Well then, if you are ordered for death, then we shall make it quick," he said as Loki looked at his brother with a smirk. "That they have, brother," said Loki as his emerald green eyes darken. "What has this man done to my nephew?" he asked Inu as he wanted a suiting punishment for the He has been trying to kidnap the boy since he was newly born, as he found out Naruto was the holder of the strongest of tailed beast and wanted to brainwash him into becoming his personal weapon to use as he saw fit. As well, he was one of the few people who was behind the information leak about what the boy had sealed within him. Inu as his mismatched eyes turned to gaze at Danzo as the old man just glared harder. The others of his team never looking the old man in the eyes, for they always felt something was off about him. Loki nodded his head to this. Thor's grip tightened on the old man's shoulder as he was ready to send a surge of lighting, though the man's body as light and danced around his eye patch. "Then I shall end him with Stormbreaker," said Thor as his battleaxe appeared into his hand from his back. Naruto watched all wide-eyed as Tsunade grabbed him from Kushina and moved inside her home. For she didn't want to taint his young and pure soul with seeing the man. Death. Kushina moved out of the shadows to where the Anbu and Jonin saw her. They all froze at the sight of the late Red Death that stood before them. They quickly fell to one knee. "Lady Kushina," they said, bowing their heads to her. "Rise. I am not the same Kushina that once walked in this village and fought alongside each of you. I am one of King Thor's nameless Valkyries. I am only here to serve He is the god of thunder and the son of Odin, as his brother is Prince Loki and god of mischief and chaos and son of Odin," said Kushina as she took on a whole new pose. Before the shinobi she once served with and trained. They looked at her with shock as she stood next to both men and knelt down next to them awaiting her orders. Loki just smirked as he released his grip on the old man as Thor threw him into the air and threw Stormbreaker at him. The battleaxe went spinning into the air as the blade the center of Danzo's forehead. His eyes widened as he didn't know what happened as the blade cut down the center of his body as lightning ignites set both halves into flames. Old man was burnt to ash. He never even got a chance to use his stolen eyes to save his pathetic life. "Tell your Hokage the man is dead," said Loki as Stormbreaker returned to Thor's hand as he swung it and all the blood fell off of it and he placed it once more on his back. Eyes now lightening from his anger as he looked up to the Anbu and Jonin. "Let this be known. Those who cross me will fall to Stormbreaker. For your laws mean nothing to my brother or I. We will protect my grandson and heir of Asgard. Declare." As he turned to leave, Loki smirked and looked down at Kushina. "Return to Asgard and being to be training the berserkers. They have grown too lazy in these times of peace," he told her as she once more and nodded her head. Vroom. She was gone in a sliver light as a Celtic symbol was left behind. Loki looked over at the others. "You are now dismissed. For we are retiring for the evening," he told them as he turned to leave them as well. Hokage's office. Sarutobi had watched everything through his crystal ball. He was horrified to see Kushina. He knew once she was able to move around freely in the village he was as good goner as well as Jiraiya, as they both watched in fear and horror of the power of Thor. But Loki still remained an unknown with his power. Thor is proving to as if not more powerful than any of. And to show you my classroom and maybe Iruka-sensei and Mizuki-sensei maybe. There and you can meet them too. Said Naruto as he was bouncing off the hallway walls. He is full of energy. Said Thor as he chuckled. Yes. Just like you as a child. Said Loki as he laughed at the memory of his brother growing up. Thor grinned as Tsunade had a fond smile of the memories of Kushina being so full of energy and what she saw of Minato as he grew up always so calm and happy. Even, he was an orphan and his mother was a coward to keep him and raise him like she should have. A single tear rolled down her cheek as Thor saw this and placed a hand on right shoulder as his left hand wiped away her tear. You get a second chance this time around with our grandson. We both do. Said Thor as he smiled softly at her. She smiled back at him as she nodded her head. Yes, a second chance that Kami has granted this fool. She told him as Thor just chuckled. They walked down the hallway and up a set of stairs to the second floor to room 204. There Naruto stood just looking at the door. He felt nervous after he had been gone long and now that he is back his whole life has changed. He now had family. He was no longer alone and knew his parents loved and cared for him before they died. What's the matter? Questioned Loki as he looked down at his nephew. Naruto looked up at him with one of his fake smiles. Nothing, just a little nervous. He told his uncle. Loki frowned at seeing the boy so young to wear a mask. This was something they would all have to work on, as it wasn't befitting the young boy and he was to grow to become leader. He needed to feel strong within himself and those around him. Thor and Tsunade also saw the smile and both felt unsettled by it as well. Tsunade placed a hand on the door and slid it open. They're sitting at his desk looking over yesterday. Homework was Iruka as Mizuki hasn't shown up yet. Looking up from his work, Iruka saw Naruto never looking behind the boy at the adults that stood behind him. Naruto! Yelled Iruka as this woke up Shikamaru and Choi. Dropped his chip as Kiba turned from talking with Shino. All four kids saw their friend had returned and where had he been this whole time, for Kiba's mom had been in a mot wreck over her foolish son's dare. Naruto, where have you been? Questioned Iruka as he had jumped out of his now toppled over chair and was now kneeling before the young boy. Naruto smiled sheepishly as he rubbed his hand behind his head. But before he could speak, a deep voice had answered for him. He has been in my care while he had been gone. He had hit his head pretty bad before he awoke 4 days later. Said Thor. At hearing that Naruto had gotten hurt in the forest, Kiba paled and just wanted to vanish into the shadows as he felt horrible his friend had gotten hurt because of their street bet. Iruka now looks up at the two men and woman that stood behind Naruto as the four kids also could see who was standing with the boy. Who are you? Lady Tsunade. As he didn't know what to think. Thor grinned. I am the boy's grandfather. He said. Loki smirked as he saw Iruka pale. I am his uncle. He said as Iruka was now twitching where he sat on the floor in front of Naruto. The news will be out sooner than later. I am his grandmother. Said Tsunade as Iruka had passed out. Naruto poked at the man looking down at him and then back up at his grandmother. Is he dead? He asked a little worried. No. He just passed out. Said Tsunade as she just stepped over the man and looked around the classroom. Nothing had changed since she was a child. Maybe a new desk. And there. But otherwise it was still all the same. Thor even poked at the man as Loki just shook his head. Stop that, you two. He will awake shortly. He told them as Naruto and Thor smiled sheepishly and stood up. Kiba raced down the steps from his desk. You're alive. Mom isn't going to kill me now. He said as he slammed into Naruto as the two boys fell to the floor. Ow. Yeah, I'm alive. Said Naruto as they both bounce onto the floor as Naruto hit his head on the hardwood floor. Kiba quickly gets up and helps the blonde back up. Sorry. I'm just glad you're alive. For my mom and the others have been tearing that forest apart looking for you and I'm grounded until I'm a genin. He said looking down at the floor. I'm sorry for daring you into going to someplace so dangerous. He said as he looks back up at his friend. Puppy was jumping around Naruto. Thanks. But going there was the best thing I have ever done in my whole life. Said Naruto as he was grinning now. They all looked at him with shock. Troublesome. But why do you say that? Questioned Shikamaru as he was now walking down to his friend followed by their other two friends. For if I wouldn't have gone there, I wouldn't have found my grandfather's hammer and I would have never met him, my uncle or my grandmother. So it worked out for me. Said Naruto. He nodded his head to this as he looked at the older blonde male with the eye patch. The man looked like an older version of Naruto as well as their late fourth Hokage. Something seemed to click in the boy's mind as he looks at Tsunade. His father was the late fourth Hokage. He asked the woman as she frowns and nods her head. Leave it to Anara to figure things out, said Tsunade as she knew what clan the boy before her belonged to as Naruto had told them he was friends with a few clan heirs. It doesn't take much to figure it out. Naruto looks like the late Hokage and now this man looks like a much older version of both of them. This is telling me that he was high. Father, said Shino as he spoke up. All eyes went to him. Loki felt a little weird with the boy as he saw a bug crawl into a small hole near his ear. Who are all your friends, Naruto? Asked Thor as he smiled at the boys that stood behind him and the others. The boy with the puppy is Kiba Inuzuka and his puppy Akamaru. This the boy with the pineapple ponytail is Shikamaru Nara and next to his is Choji Akamichi and next to Shino Aburame, said Naruto as he was grinning up at his grandfather. Guys, this is my grandpa Thor, he is a king and a god of thunder. Then this is my uncle Loki, he is prince and the advisor to the king, and he is a god of mischief and chaos. Then this is my grandma Tsunade Senju, he said now bouncing around. Kiba raised an eyebrow at this. Dope, you must have hit your head harder than what you think. Those two can't be gods, he said as he looked at the two men. We are gods of old times. Before this world you have now came to be, said Thor. Shikamaru arched an eyebrow at the blonde man. Could you bring scrolls about your old world for us to learn about? He asked. That would be a grand idea. For Naruto needs to learn about his family roots, said Thor. Loki smirked as he looked at the little Nara. Naruto has done well in putting his trust in this boy, he thought to himself as Shikamaru reminded him of himself in some way. Just then they heard a groan from behind them as Iruka was slowly waking up as he slowly sat up. What happened? Why am I on the floor? He questioned nobody as he opened eyes to see Naruto and the two men next to him as Tsunade was sitting at his desk looking over what Naruto had missed, for Iruka had a file on his desk with Naruto's name. For all the homework of the past week and anything else he had missed before he vanished. Is this what they are learning? Questioned Tsunade as she arched an eyebrow at all this BS that is being taught to the future shinobi. Iruka's head snapped over to the female voice and saw Tsunade glaring at him as she held up the homework. He dumbly nods his head to answer her question. When did this change happen? Asked Tsunade as her honey brown eyes hardened and took on an icy tone to them. After the death of the fourth Hokage, the civilian council with the help of Elder Danzo changed the Shinobi Academy over and made it more suitable for civilian children to become shinobi, said Iruka as he was against all the changes when he became a teacher. For he was unsure if this was really helping them. You must be joking. This is all pointless. You spend more time in books than having them training and learn jutsus. This will only help them so far. But out in the field this wouldn't do nothing for them, growled out Tsunade as she stood up slamming the papers back onto the desk. I understand they do need to learn how to read and write. Math and science and history. But they also need hands-on field training. By the looks of it you only spend the third and fourth year learning jutsu and survival training. This is good. Please understand, Lady Tsunade. But my hands are tried, and I can only do so much. But I do try to get them to learn everything they need to know when it comes to the survival training, and the only jutsus I am allowed to teach them is the clone jutsu, hedge jutsu, and replacement. All other jutsus they learn are from their clans or sense. Once out on the field, said Iruka as he was now fearing for his life. As this was going on, the other students had been filing into the classroom and Ino was standing next to Naruto. Hey Naruto, what's going on and why does Iruka look so scared? Asked Ino as she looked at her fellow blonde as she just realized he was back from wherever he had vanished. 2. Hey, when did you get back and where have you been? She asked him with shock across her face. Hey Ino. Nothing much, just my grandma scaring Iruka-sensei. I got hurt when I went to the forest and my grandpa and uncle found me with the help of one of their Fryan, said Naruto as he smiled at her. Ino just nodded her head at this and looked at the four boys who also nodded their heads as she looked up at the tall blonde man and raven hair man. She had a slight blue her cheeks after looking at both men. Wow, they're hot, and how Naruto looks like the blonde man. He is going to grow up smoking. This thought to herself as she looked by. Naruto with a little giggle. Hinata had froze next to Ino as she heard the girl greet her crush. Her pale lavender eyes widen at seeing him back. She was so happy he was safe and back. Is she blind? Asked Thor as he got down on one knee to look at Hinata's eyes. Hinata blinked and jumped away from the man holding her chest as he scared her. No sir, I am not blind. She told him, giving him a cute little pout. Her eyes must be one of those bloodlines Naruto spoke of. Said Loki as he looked her eyes as well. If you noticed brother, her eyes had a hint of lavender in them. Yes. With a smile. Hinata nodded her head. Why yes, it is my clan's bloodline, the Byakugan. She told him. Loki nodded his head to this. He was going to have to look into the bloodlines of these clans and learn more about them. Just the ever-growing list of things for him to look. Well, I am going to have a word with Sensei about how this is happening and vote to get control of the Shinobi Academy back into the hands of the Shinobi Council. It should have never left. Growled Tsunade as she walked over to the door. You two stay with Naruto as see this nightmare of lesson. She told them as she vanished in a of leaves. Well, if she is anything like how she is in bed, I feel bad for those who will be suffering her wrath. Said Thor with a shit-eating grin. Loki just slapped his hand across his face as some of the kids looked at him weird as others just blushed as they could figure out what he was talking about. Though Naruto looked up at him clueless as Shikamaru sighed and looked over at Loki. Naruto, do not worry about what your grandfather has said, and we'll explain it to you once you are older. Said Loki as he pulled on Thor's ear. We are around children. Not around your warriors. He hissed at the man. Ouch. I'm sorry. Cried Thor as the others just sweat dropped at the large blonde's antics. Yay, he is Naruto's grandfather. Hell, some would even believe the man his father. How much they looked like each other and acted alike. Tsunade stormed out of the Shinobi Academy as she made her way to the Hokage Tower. She was going to have a few words with her old sensei and then have a few word. The council, and she didn't give a damn if no one liked it. For it was in her given right to demand change and fix all the mistakes of the past. I was a fool for thinking things here would be fine without me. Sensei is a weak old man that is allowing his elders and civilian council to walk all over him as the Shinobi Council does nothing to stop them. But why do they not stop them? Questioned Tsunade to herself as her eyes widen. Danzo. What the name that came to mind? They must have done something to each clan to keep them from moving against him and his pets. She figured as she stormed right into the Hokage Tower as the Chunin and Joe that worked or were in the tower for missions watched the princess of Konoha walk past them. Storming up the stairs, Tsunade saw her sensei standing in the hallway as he was making his way over to the council chambers. He stopped and smiled at her. Ah, Suna. Was just going to send Anbu after you for a council meeting. He told her. But his smile slowly faded as he saw her glaring at him. She narrowed her eyes. Good, for I have some damn questions for the council about the bullshit lesson plan at the Shinobi Academy. It is being ran like the damn civilian SC. She hissed as at him. Sarutobi held up his hand. We will be addressing all of this today and there will be many changes going on now. He told her with a reassuring nod. Fine. Tsunade huffed as she crossed her arms under her chest. They walked down the hallway leading to the council chambers as they could hear the civilian council yell. The Shinobi Council. She looked over at her old sensei. Sarutobi let out a sigh as he pushed open the council chamber doors. He walked over to his chair at the center of all the tables. Tsunade walked over to her clan seat and her place. Next to her seat was the Uzumaki clan empty chair, and once someone becomes Hokage they gain a chair on the council as well. There next to the Uzumaki chai. The Namikaze empty chair. A soft frown on her face as she looked over at the civilians and elders glaring at her. Hokage-sama. What is this about the demon bewitching Princess Tsunade? Demanded one of the civilian councilmen as he held lust in his eyes as he looked at busty blonde woman seated near the Hokage on the shinobi side. Tsunade wrinkled her nose in disgust at the lard of a man looking at her with those nasty eyes of his undressing her. Tsunade returned to the village finding out her son had a child and she has returned to raise her late son's child. Said Sarutobi to the council. Now this had everyone talking and whispering. May we ask who was Lady Tsunade's late son? Asked Shikaku as he had an idea but wanted to know for sure. Tsunade smirked. My son was one Minato Namikaze. His son is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze Senju. She told them as the council exploded into an uproar of people yelling screaming. The room was filled with a dark killer intent as a man with long raven locks appeared in the chambers. He glared at the civilian side of the council as he saw that a few of T. Shinobi Council was laughing or had looks of shock. Silence, commanded Loki as he looked around. The room grew quiet as they all looked at him. Loki, I thought you were with Thor and Naruto. Questioned a surprised Tsunade. Loki smirked at the blonde woman. I am also here. I figure I'd shadow you and see what these fools would try against the young prince. He told her. Why are you calling that demon a prince? Demanded the same man that was lusting over Tsunade. Loki's cold jade green eyes slowly moved towards the man. Naruto is the prince. For his grandfather. My brother is a king and I am a prince of our homeland. As well as our advisor to the king, he said to the foolish man. Gasps could be heard from this statement alone. Shikaku leveled his gaze at the newcomer. Is this king the father of Minato or Kushina? Uzumaki. He asked him. Loki smirked at him. I see you are as shark as the little Nara I met with Naruto this morning. My brother is the father of Minato Namikaze Senju Odensan. Thus making Uzumaki Namikaze Senju Odensan. He said he saw the wheels turning on the civilian side of the council. If the demon brat is royalty, we could push our daughters on him and use them to take control and power from the grandfather once he passes on and names the demon his heir to the throne. They thought as one. But Loki being around a very long time knew their game and tricks. Give it up. For Thor will be in power for a very long time before Naruto would ever take over the throne. That is if he doesn't pass it to me first. He said with an evil smirk on his face. The women on the council began to do their best to flirt with the man who just looked at them with boredom in his eyes. They had nothing he wanted and they all looked dirty pigs in his eyes. Cover yourselves, you dirty sows. He told them as he turned away from them. They saw the same coldness Minato would show his fangirls in the man just now. It was eerie. This is the reason the council meeting was called. Said Sarutobi as he slammed his hands on the table before him and glared at the elders and the civilian council as he There was about 3 people missing from the meeting. He would have his Anbu found out where they are after the meeting was over. Loki playing along looked at the old leader. Why did you call this meeting for? He asked as he walked up and took a seat next to Tsunade in the Uzumaki chair. Sarutobi took on a grave and heavy look. I am here today to inform you that Danzo Shimura passed away early this morning from a heart attack. He told them. How do you know of this? Questioned a very nervous Homura Mitokado as he looked to his partner in crime Kaharu Udatane as she was now sweating bullets as well. I had sent an Anbu to give him the message. When no one answered they entered the home to find the door was left unlocked. As they investigate to make sure there was any unwelcome person in his home, they found him in his bed. When they check for any signs of life, he was already dead. At the hospital they did any autopsy finding he passed from a heart attack. But they had also found something very odd on his person. He said as he paused. What did they find Hokage-sama? Asked Inoichi as he wanted to know. He loved gossip as much as his wife and daughter. Sarutobi smirked behind his hands that covered his mouth. They had found the eye of Shisui Uchiha under his bandage eye. As well he had a mutated arm that held cells of Hokage, my sensei along with many other eyes of the Uchiha clan on it. It appeared that someone allowed Danzo the clearance to them in the hospital and how Kaharu Ut. You are the elder that oversees all the happenings in the hospital. How was Danzo able to get those eyes that had been sealed away for Sasuke if he ever awoke the man? Sharingan as he would need the eyes of someone who was closely related to him for a transplant as for the Mangekyo Sharingan leaves the user blind if overused. As well, leaves the question of how he had gotten the eye of Shisui as his body was never recovered when he vanished. He said as he now glared at the woman behind him. I don't know. He must have paid someone off. Said Kaharu as files appeared before her. Then answer me why your name is all over the forms. Okay, the surgery to implant the eye into Danzo. Questioned Sarutobi as 2 Anbu appeared behind her. These must be fakes. Cried Kaharu as she was panicking now. Sarutobi smirked. Then explain to me why these came from your office at home and in the hospital. He asked her as she now shaking in her kimono. Someone must have planted them on me. Danzo has always been doing shady things in the village. said Kaharu as she thought she was covering her ass in just plaque. Blame on a dead man. Sarutobi just nodded his head and the Anbu behind her grabbing and dragging her away. Why are you doing this? Yelled Kaharu as she vanished from the council chambers. The others in the council chambers began to sweat heavy as it appeared the Hokage was learning about the dirty dealings done in the shadows behind his back. Sarutobi's dark coal eyes rested now on his other elder. Homura, could you kindly explain to me why you and the civilian council have been trying to gain access to the Uzu, Namikaze, Senju, and Uchiha funds? He asked his old teammate. Homura's eyes hardened. The Uzumaki and Namikaze clans are no longer and those funds could be used to better the village. He said in a cold and uncaring voice. As for Uchiha clan's funds, it is to better manage the money for the young boy, for he doesn't know what to do with all of that. Last, the Senju funds. Tsunade is just throwing Awa family wealth with her pointless gambling. So what better is than to build onto the new shopping district? He said as he crossed his arms. Sarutobi nodded his head to this. Well, I see what you are doing. But that isn't your call to make, and I have told you and the others many times that Uzumaki, Namikaze, are frozen until the future time as it stated in the late 4th, as well as Kushina Uzumaki's will. As well, if anyone of the Uzumaki clan ever appeared in the village, they first say to all the funds in the Uzumaki accounts. He told his old teammate. What are you getting at? Questioned Homura as he was growing tired of this foolish little game. As Naruto is the last Uzumaki and Namikaze, all those funds are his. What you and those on the civilian council have stolen for your own personal gain will be paying back. Interest. Do you understand me? Said Sarutobi in a calm voice. You have no right to do that to us. Yelled the bastard that lusted for Tsunade. Sarutobi looked to the man and smiled. I do, and I have already taken care of all the money you have taken from all those accounts. As well the lands you stole in Busan. Everything that each of you own has been placed into Naruto's name. He told them. Yelling could be heard again as everyone began screaming and yelling about the injustice that has happened to them. Enough. Yelled Sarutobi as he looked at them with his icy gaze. Files appeared before each and every one of them. Some had more than others. I am shocked there are only 2 members on this civilian council that hadn't stolen any money and has been honest since taking a chair with the others. You 2 are not punished with having everything taken from you, said Sarutobi as he looked at a man with a long scar running across his face with one milky white eye that appeared to wearing a dirty leather shop apron. Another woman with long black hair that appeared to have flour on her face as she appeared to be busy working in her bakery when Shish called for the meeting. Why would we steal? As former shinobi, we knew the difference between a scroll and the kunai sealed within it. We have done all we could for the child and fed and hid him. These bastards, fox hunts, each year or when they got bored and wanted to see a child cry. Said the man with the milky eye. I agree, we have more honor than they do as former shinobi, and we were hired to kill people in the past. Said the woman as she looked away with disgust on her face. Depending on what you took and how much. It is in all those files. That will be returned to Tsunade Senju as she is Naruto's grandmother and the one that will be handling everything for him. As well has gained the votes of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans on the council. Said Sarutobi as he smirked. Loki grinned. I will be here as well for the time being, getting all affairs in order. For this is the department my brother knows I shine in. As all you now see. I have found a dirty deeds as you all slept last night. As of now all you own belongs to my nephew. He said with his grin as chaos could be seen in his eyes. Anbu appeared taking all the people away. As Tsunade looked over at the raven hair man sitting next to her. Is that what you were doing in my grandfather's old office la night? She asked him, not sure if she wanted the answer. Loki smirked. Yes. I had Heimdall send me a few of my helpers and we got to work seeing what has been happening, and I meet with the Hokage early this morning while and my brother were busy trying to make another child. He told her. Tsunade blushed and turned away from him. We were just sleeping. She stuttered out as she knew for fact Loki was right. But she didn't want to tell him. Sum had a shit-eating grin on her face. Tell me, Tsunade, how big is he? She questioned, moving closer to hear all the juice details about her mystery mate. Sum. This isn't the place to be talking about that. Said Tsunade as she almost passed out from embarrassment. You're right. We will have a girls' day after this at the hot springs with all the other ladies and you can go into detail then. Said Tsume as Tsunade had passed out from the woman's antics. Loki smirked at the woman as she winked at him. He leaned over Tsunade and over to Tsume. Maybe we could meet sometime at the hot springs. He told her with the smirk still on his face. Tsume slight blushed but kept her grin. Don't make promise you don't mean to keep. She told him as she leaned closer brushing her lips against his and leaning back into H. chair. Oh, I don't break my promises. I do attend on meeting you there later after you have your fun with my sister-in-law here. Said Loki as Tsunade was waking up and shot you. She heard that last part. Loki said. Hold on, I'm not married. Said Tsunade looked at Loki a little panicked. Loki smirked. Give it time. You will have a grand royal wedding with my brother, and he will make you a very happy woman for the rest of your lives. He told her as soon. Didn't know what to think. The man she had a one-night stand with and son with was back in her life. She had gotten drunk once more and slept with him once again. But he was the last man she with to create her son, and from there she never gave anyone the time of day. Just maybe part of her was waiting around for Thor to return and be part of her life. Hell, who knows? She felt her mind clearer since she has gotten away from Shinzo. Whatever the raven hair woman was doing to her was making everything she did very hazy and her thinking unclean and chaotic at times. For now the civilian council will have 2 members until we see a time when it will be fit to find new members. Said Sarutobi as he was watching the shower between Tsume and Tsunade at times when she was snapped out of her daydream. Shinobi Academy. Thor had hijacked the class from Iruka and taken the children outside for combat train as the Loki that was with him was only a shadow and he knew he could get away. Why? More. As the shadow Loki took the lesson plan from the raven hair scar-faced man and several books and began reworking all the lessons from here on out that would be effect for the children in the future. As they did for the children from Asgard that wished to be warriors. Come children, let us go outside and show me what you know so far in combat. Said Thor as the kids cheered as they all ran out of the classroom. Mizuki was standing at the open classroom door when he saw the tall well-built blonde-hair man with a single eye. At first, he thought he was looking at the spirit of the 4th Hokage until he heard the demon child speak. Come on grandpa, it's going to be fun. Said Naruto as he pulled on Thor's arm. So someone is claiming to be the demon's family. What a joke. The man must have been paid by the elders or something. He thought to himself as he just walked back the classroom with Iruka following behind him as they walked out to the training grounds. Iruka looked at the kids and smiled. Alright children, please show Thor-sama your katas for the academy style of taijutsu. He said as they all got into 2 lines facing EAC. Other as Iruka walked down the center of it and Mizuki walking up to Naruto. Alright Naruto. Now to the katas I have shown you. Said Mizuki. Naruto smiled and nodded his head as he got into a messy stance and began going through katas that made no sense to Thor and was leaving too many openings from the other children were doing. Naruto, what are you doing? Asked Thor as he looked at Mizuki and his grandson. Mizuki smirked. He is learning something different from the others. He said half laughing as Iruka was busy helping a pink-haired girl with her katas. Thor's lone eye looked at Mizuki. What you are teaching him will get him killed out in the battlefield. He growled out. Naruto froze and looked at his sensei and his grandfather. What are you talking about grandpa? Mizuki sensei said this was a more advanced kata from the others for Iwa. So well, he said as his eyes widened in horror. Stormbreaker appeared in Thor's hand as lighting could be seen in his long eye dancing to his eye patch. You have been setting my grandson up to fail. But for how long and why? Demanded Thor as Iruka had come running over to the 2 men as Naruto was pushing Evrio away from his grandfather. No one cares if that demon lives once he becomes a ninja. He is nothing but a demon for us to beat and one day kill. Hissed out Mizuki. Lighting shot from the heavens wrapping around Thor and Mizuki. Keeping Iruka from helping his stupid ass friend who just made his bed. Why do you care? Are you not the ones as the civilian council hired to pretend to be the demon's family and take him off and kill him? Asked Mizuki, still digging his grave deeper. Loki heard this as the real Loki was now there at the academy when he felt his brother power from the Hokage tower. Even all the parents of the clan children from the Mi had appeared at the academy along with other shinobi to see what was happening. Bastard, how dare you speak of my heir lowly and wish death on an innocent child. As king I am above all your laws, and for your transgration you shall die here. Thundered Thor's voice as everyone heard this. Mizuki pulled out a kunai getting ready to fight, but didn't know what happened to him as Stormbreaker come down on him with lightning surround the blade as he was brunt. Before their very eyes, everyone stood there in awe of Thor's power. They had never seen a thunder jutsu the likes of that one, and how he controlled the element. It was like it was one with him. Thor took deep calming breaths as the thunder faded away and the clouds in the sky fade away, and once more the sky was clear, and the sun was shining down upon them. He looked over to his brother was standing there just looking at him. He said and did something against Naruto. He questioned. Thor just nodded his head. He didn't dare to speak, for what would come out of his mouth wasn't fit for children to hear. Even though he has heard his own grandson say words, he didn't want to set a bad example and say them now. With Tsunade looking on at him with worry in her eyes for him. Sarutobi sighed as he looked at the thunder god before him. Do not worry, Thor-sama. We will handle everything from here. Thor looked to him and slowly nodded his head. Naruto ran up to his grandfather and jumped onto the large man. He just held on for dear life. This is what the man need. Now, he needed someone to hold him. What better than his own grandchild? Thor wrapped his arm around the boy and just held him as he fell to his knees. Never a tear his single eye. He just looked lost from what was happening before him. It had been several days since Thor had executed Mizuki before everyone. This shocked all the children, for it showed them the cold, cruel world they wanted to take part in. Several fangirls rethinking if this was a life they wanted to. For it wasn't like the fairy tales or stories they were told as children. It was much bloodier and colder. Loki had met with all the academy teachers and the headmaster and laid out the new lesson plan that they would be now teaching all the children. It had cut out so much BS that the civilian council had set in place for the students to learn. Since they had placed out their lesson plan, they had a higher genin death rate as well a low chunin T rate, and many shinobi retiring after their first real true mission. It scared them too much, to the point some had to be checked into the mental hospital, for they couldn't han world anymore. For their first kill or seeing their teammates killed was just way too much for their little minds to handle, and their Jonin senseis could only do so much. Loki looked over all the Chunin senseis with a smirk on his face. He was getting them up to the standards of Asgard on training and turning out true warriors. He had even for a few Valkyries and Berserkers to come and teach hand-to-hand combat to the academy students. He mainly called for the ones that knew a form of martial arts. Need say the beautiful blue beast of Konoha was given a run for his money, that he began training alongside the Berserkers so he wouldn't need to rely on opening the 8-gat battle. He had even brought his student to learn from them. 2 weeks later, Tsunade sat at the hot springs with all the clan wives and Sum, as she was the clan head and clan mother all in one. Thank Kami Jiraiya isn't in the village. I don't want with him spying on us, she thought to herself. Border of land of fire. Man with long white spiky hair sneezes. Some lovely lady must be thinking of me, he said with a huge grin on his face as he raced across the treetops to return to the Leaf village. Back with Tsunade. So how are things going with Naruto and catching him up with everyone in his studies? Asked Chichi Akamichi as she smiles at Tsunade. Soft smiles graces Tsunade's lips. Everything has been going well. Under Loki's tutelage he has grown leaps and bounds, she said as she looked down at the water. That's good, the pup's growing and becoming stronger, said Sum as a feral grin graces her lips. So how are things with his grandfather? She asked as they all wanted know how Loki, said Tsunade, and Thor been busy in the sheets trying to create another child. Tsunade blushes as she sinks into the water. All eyes on her. We are getting along very well. We have been talking and I have been telling him stories of what I remember. Minato from the Third War and how I was Kushina's sensei before the war, she said. I do have one question, said Usagi Yamanaka. Tsunade looked at her and nodded her head for the woman to go ahead and ask her question. So after the night you had with Thor, did you date anyone else or hook up with anyone throughout the years? Asked Usagi. Tsunade let out a sigh and looked up to the heavens. No. After I found out I was with Minato, I went back looking for Thor. But I was told he was gone, and I did look for my travels. I even looked for him when I returned to the village to train Kushina and her team and took part in the last war. I never saw him. In some ways I was happy in. Others I wasn't. For I don't know. She said, looking at all the woman before her. Well, it is logical that you had made a special bond with Thor-sama and somehow you had fallen for the man. Said Haruhi Aburame. Tsunade looked over at Haruhi with wide eyes. She hadn't even thought about it in that way. Did I fall in love with him that night we met? I might have. For he is the only. Have been with since. She didn't finish that thought as she didn't want to depress herself. But oddly with the thought of Thor. He filled that emptiness she had felt for so. Even now that she is away from her former student she feels better and doesn't even think of Dan anymore. Was Shizune doing something to her? Tsunade, what happened to your student that was traveling with you? Asked Yoshino Nara as she had been wondering for a while for, she hadn't seen the young woman. Tsunade had returned. She blinked her eyes and looked over at Yoshino. To be honest, I have no idea. But to be truly honest, I feel a hell of a lot better not being around her. I don't feel hazy and confused anymore. It was like she was drugging me with something that not even I could trace in my drinks or food. She said, looking at the others. They just nodded their heads. As they always found it odd how Tsunade just dropped everything before Kushina had her baby and left the village. For she was the one that going to deliver the baby in the first place. Bored of the land of rice. Shizune waited in a shady bar for someone to meet her. She hadn't gotten orders in a long time from her master nor had she known where Tsunade had vanished to. To run to the safe point to meet her master's little pet. Hokage Tower. Thor and Loki sat across from Shikaku, the Hokage, and Commander Dragon. What is it that you need of me, Sarutobi? Questioned Thor as he was tried. He had a long night with Tsunade and was hoping to get some rest before he was to oversee Nar class's combat training. Loki narrowed his eyes studying the three men sitting across from himself and his brother. Why are you helping us? Asked Shikaku as he wanted to know why this man. No god wanted to waste his time helping them as this village has done nothing but abuse H. grandson and disobey his son's final wishes. Thor just chuckles as he looks at Loki for him to answer the question for him. We do this mainly for Naruto. The boy loves his home. Even though he has been put through hell here, he still wants to protect his home. For we know and you know it be nothing for use to go to Kushina's old homeland and rebuild the village hidden in the whirlpools. But we do not. For a pure heart of one little boy. Said Loki. All three men looked at the two gods before them with shock. They never thought of it that way. If they ever pulled everything that Naruto owned here in the village, they be destroyed. By just one little boy, by the stupid villages that are so blinded by their hatred for a fox that attacked so long ago and is sealed within a child that protects each day by living. Tell me, will Naruto be like the other children or will he be like you too? Asked Sarutobi as he worried for the little blonde. Thor smirked. When Naruto found my hammer, it still had the enchantment that my father put on it so long ago. One who is worthy of the power of my son Thor the god. Thunder. Thou shall inherit his powers. So with my father never taking that enchantment off of Mjolnir, and when he found it with his pure heart and strong will to live in peace. Those he holds dear to his heart. His god blood was awoken, and he will have control of all lightning and he wouldn't even need Mjolnir or those hand signs you use for jutsus. He told them. But we first want to see what all powers Naruto has gotten from my brother. For he is already my brother's grandson. Then with the enchantment on Mjolnir, it just adds tea. But for now, we would rather share with Naruto his new powers. When we see fit, we will tell you. Said Loki as he said with a smirk on his face. That is understandable for it falls under clan laws and clan secrets. Said Shikaku as both Commander Dragon and the Hokage glare at the lazy Nara. Who just sighs. Yo. No, we cannot push for more information. For Naruto is under 3 clans. Well, for if we see the Odinsons is a clan of the village now because of Naruto. Troublesome. Said as he just wanted to return to his office to take a nice long nap. He is correct. I have read up on all laws of this village and land. Said Loki with a smirk on his face and chaos playing in his eyes. All 3 men shivered for the look that was in Loki's eyes matched the one in Naruto's eyes when he about to play a prank on someone. They question who the boy's grandfather at times was really. But he looked just like Thor-sama. But he does take after his uncle in ways. If we are done here, I have to get to the academy for it is time for Naruto's class's combat training. Said Thor as he stood up from the chair he was sitting in. If there anything else you need to talk about, Loki will handle anything else. He said as he vanished in a flash of lightning. Loki smirked at them. It appears the king has grown bored with your games, Hokage-sama. He said with a playful smile. Sarutobi let out a tried sigh. I believe we are done here. For there isn't much more we need to talk about. All I want to know. Will Naruto hurt anyone with his new power? Asked with a little worry lacing his voice. No. That is why we are so involved in his training at the academy and at home. Said Loki as he stood up and vanished from sight. It was like he was just a shadow that the office with them. Something that left them feeling unsettled. Was he someone they feared to cross? They are glad Danzo was dead. But there was always another fool out of the woodworks willing to take the old Warhawk's place. Shinobi Academy. Naruto stood outside with the other kids awaiting his grandfather to show up as his uncle was standing there looking at them as the other warriors had shown up to begin training alongside the children. Naruto sighed as he looked up at the sky. He was getting bored waiting for his grandfather and he was feeling a strange energy building up in his belly. It felt weird. Like a shock buildup. Without thinking he held up his hand pointing to a tree away from everyone as a lightning bolt shot out of his palm. From the force of the energy that shot his hand, it sent him flying back into another person standing behind him. He flew right into Shikamaru. Nara. Said lazy boy hit the ground hard and looked up at Naruto. What the hell, Naruto? Questioned Shikamaru as he saw the blonde with smoke coming from the blonde's right hand and the boy's eyes just spinning as he knocked himself from just the force of the blast. Loki had turned as he heard the thunder of the lightning bolt strike and was wide-eyed as the bolt was much more powerful than anything Thor had ever done at that age. Hell, was most powerful strike he had seen in a long time. Just then Thor appeared in the clearing next to the burning tree with lightning dancing from his eye to his eye patch. As he looked at the smoking tree and can see the loss. Lightning fading away from the ground. What just happened here? Demanded Thor as he looked around the training field. It appears Naruto shot lightning from his hand. Said Kiba as he was hiding behind Loki as the other children hid behind the green-eyed man as well. Thor just chucked at this. It appears his power are coming in nicely. He said with amusement in his lone eye. Poor Choji went over to check on Naruto and Shikamaru. Helping take the knocked out boy off his best friend. Are you okay, Shikamaru? He asked as he frowned looking at both boys and looked a little more worried at Naruto who was slowly coming to. Troublesome. Yeah, I'm alright. Just got knocked over by this blonde maelstrom. Said Shikamaru with a laugh. What happened? Questioned Naruto as he was now being helped up by the two boys. Well, Naruto, we will have to begin training on how to control your lightning before you hurt yourself or someone else. Said Thor as he just chuckled as he looked at Valky. She had just arrived to come and personal train the boy on combat and strategy as she was the leader of all Valkyries after her late queen and Thor, Loki's mother. Valkyrie walks up to Thor and Loki and gets down onto one knee. My Highness. I have just arrived to be the young prince's private training. She tells Thor as she nods to Loki. Loki just nods his head and looks at all the kids now following their new katas from the warriors or the past now their new senseis. As Loki looked around the other major villages with his shadows and saw that all the academies taught their children the same fighting style and they didn't learn anything different unless they belonged to a clan. Picked up a new style from their Jonin sensei or became a chunin and found a fighting style that suited them better. But until then, they all knew each other's weaknesses. That wouldn't do. They are soldiers and need to be trained like it. For back in the time of the Avengers he remembered looking at the different armies and saw all their train was different from each other. But they did have some things that were the same. That couldn't be helped for they had to do that. For that all used the same weapons too. With after all. But now that was like the times before the time of modern warfare and they used their hands and jutsus and blades of some kind to aid them in battle. He are like this type of combat after all. For he was skilled with his staff and sword as well as his magic. Well, I will have you work with Naruto after he comes home. For he will be a little out of it for a while. Said Thor as he saw Naruto fall back on his Ass as he was a little with his ears ringing. Also it didn't help he was hearing laughter from somewhere. But no one around him was laughing at him. They just looked at him all wide-eyed. So guess was the pain in the ass fox. Slowly he closed his eyes as he wondered if he could zap the fox for laughing at him. Don't you think about it, brat. For I will make you feel all your pain from training with your grandfather. Growled out Kurama. Naruto just paled with his eyes going wide and slowly nodding his head to this. He didn't want to feel everything for a couple days. He liked just a good night of sleep in. Good the next day.